Right, can we start with the salawat, please? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So first of all, Shaban Mubarak. It's the first night of Shaban. And one of the things recommended for the month of Shaban is to be able to learn or recite the Qur'an in preparation for the month of Ramadan. So this is one of the things we're doing. If you're on one of the other groups, because this is known as the month of the Prophet, there's a book that I've put on that other group, which is a copy of Sunan al-Nabi. It's important you go through it. If you're not on the other group, I'm sure we'll put a link on that you can be added onto it. And there's a chapter on Qur'an here. It's chapter number 20. I'm not going to go over all of it at the moment, but maybe you could read it and see adab, or how the Prophet used to recite the Qur'an. But that's something you may want to look at later. Tonight, it's important. It's one of the most important nights of the year. You'll come back next year. So if you can recite 2 rakat Salah, and in every rakat, Surah Al-Fatiha and 11 times Ikhlas, do istighfar and ask for your hajat. It's amazing what tonight can do. And it's not often that you get a Thursday night and the 1st of Shaban together. I don't know how many years later we're going to get it. So that's just a preamble. Journaling the Quran, you've done that. We've looked at introduction. You've looked at the color directory. It's on the website as well. That's the QR code to our past sessions. One day we'll go through the Quran City map, and we're a little bit ahead. All this is part of Quran City. This is something that you should know that we recite every time you open the Quran, which is Walzam qalbi hifdha kitabika kama allamtani. This is what the Prophet used to recite. You all got little heart stickers. Hopefully you will be learning it and reciting it. The first thing that I normally do, and you're quite used to this now, is going through the short focuses of each surah. So if I said Surah Al-Fatiha, in your head immediately should be, in a nutshell, basically the concept of the Quran, or you could call it the summary of the Quran. If I went to Baqarah, the short focus would be history of Iman. If I went to Al Imran, immediately in your head you should be Muslim identity, right? And then Nisa, it was the manifestation of that Muslim identity in a social atmosphere, and you saw there was the respect of women that showed up first. Then we had Surah Al-Ma'idah. Again, there was a continuation of Surah Al-Nisa, but there was the perfection of religion there as well. Okay. Surah Al-An'am, do you remember what we talked about in Surah Al-An'am? It was the practicality of Tawheed. Do you remember that, right? And you found that people had self-imposed traditions, which weren't part of Islam at all, but they made it up themselves, and we talked about that at some extent. Now, last week, we looked at Surah Al A'raaf, and if you remember Surah Al A'raaf, we looked at basically the concept of those who reject divine guidance. I'm going to continue with Surah Al A'raaf, and as we agreed last week, we're going to prepare for Ramadan in that we're going to do Surah Al Ankabut. It's okay that we're moving up, but Qur'an, anyway you pick up is Qur'an, but I'd like to just make sure we're prepared for it. So back to Surah Al A'raaf, and we're going to look at, we did look at Surah Ayah number 180, which was وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا, if you remember. Now we're going to look at Ayah 203. The one that we looked at, Ayah 180, was the 99 names of Allah, and somewhere along the line, maybe, if we get a chance, we will try and do those names, because they are phenomenal. So let's look at Ayah 203, okay? So I'd like you to look at it from the beginning, although here you have it from هَذَا بَصَائِرُ. وَإِذَا لَمْ تَعْتِهِمْ بِآيَةٍ قَالُوا لَوْ لَجْتَبَيْتَهَا. And when you bring them a revelation, they say, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَتَّبِعُ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ مِنْ رَبِّي. They say, why did you not make it up? What happened? Now this is what Allah says. هَذَا بَصَائِرُ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. This, you remember what basir is. We talked about it a little bit. Basir is perception, sight. Nazar is sight as well. He says, this is clarity inside and outside from your Rabb. Wahudan, it's a guidance. Wa rahma, and it's mercy. Liqawmi yu'minun, for a people who believe. If you look right back at Baqarah, Dhalikal kitab la rayba fihi hudal lil muttaqin. It's a guidance for those who believe. It wasn't supposed to be a pare and pare book. It was supposed to be a book that I utilize, that I look through, and that I'm able to use to reach my full potential. But we're going to focus on 204. Now 204 says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ. When the Qur'an is recited, wherever, whether you have it on a tape recorder, whether you're reciting it, putting it on at home, people tend to, in Ramadan, use it as background music. That's not what he says. He says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ. First he says, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. Let's look at that name. Istima'a is to listen and pay attention. It's not only to listen. Sami'a, you know when you say Sami Allahu liman hamida. So Sami'a in essence is to hear, to listen. But istima'a is a combination. It's a combination of listening and paying attention. So he says when the Qur'an is recited, fastami'u, pay attention. You can't have it as background music. You can't say that in all other months I will have nasheeds, but in Ramadan I will pray Qur'an in the car. I will just leave it on and then I'll chat to my kids. That's not what he says. He says, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. And then he doesn't stop there. He says, وَأَنْسِتُوا. Now let's see what they... Ansata means literally keep quiet. Don't, it's not just listen. Ansitu is keep quiet and listen. Pay attention to it, okay? وَأَنْسِتُوا. See, in this surah you find listening and in different, you've got ansitu, which you've got here, or ansata. You've got sakata. When we talked about Musa, it was when there's a loud noise and you want people to quieten down. And then there's samit, one who remains quiet. These are just words that come up in the Quran. But right now, what we're talking about is he's saying, when Quran is really recited, fastami'u. Again, I'd like you to say this with me. That was listen and pay attention. Wa ansitu, quiet. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. If you want to have mercy. Now what is mercy? It's not like something that falls down from the sky. If I want to be merciful to my child, I will tell my child, brush your teeth, clean your room. So if I want guidance from this Quran, then I must listen, and I know I'm going over this again and again. I must listen, I must pay attention, I must be quiet. That is why you're told downstairs when the Salah is being recited, be quiet, because Salah is Quran. I know they put this thing up and they tell us how many years deeds, 80, 70, 60 years deeds are rubbed out. That is a metaphorical thing to tell you and me. That's not what Quran was about. Now as Khojas in Salah, we only recite the short surah. Somehow in our heads, if it's a long surah, we become Sunni. And that's okay too, we're following the Sunnah of the Prophet, right? But in essence, we're supposed to learn as many surahs as possible. Okay. Then he says, next ayah, which is ayah 205. So now this was an outward thing. The Quran was recited, I kept quiet, I heard it, I listened to it, and I let it go through me. Then he says, that was outside. So what do I do inside? وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ. Remember your Rabb inside of you. So every single time inside, I've got to remember him. تَضَرُّعًا وَخِيفًا. تَضَرُّعًا, if I can say, is humility. Khifa is slight fear. Now that fear is not fear of being scared, as in fear of a tyrant, but fear of upsetting. It's like I have a fear of mom. You don't fear your mom, but in essence you positively fear her because you don't want to upset her. So he's saying, وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ تَضَرُّعًا وَخِيفًا. Right? Continually remember him. I say this story many times. I remember a scholar from Dar es Salaam who had come. And when he came, we used to visit a young man in the hospital next door, the orthopedic hospital. And he'd been there for years at end. You all know Sheikh Murtaza Ali Dina, right? Okay, so he had come, and it was many, many years ago. And we were walking from here to the hospital, and he came with me because he wanted to see him, and he wanted to come with me. Now, throughout that whole road, whenever he saw a dandelion, whenever he would say, Alhamdulillah, Shukrillah, Astaghfir. I got a bit fed up, and I thought, is he doing it for me? I mean, God's sakes, okay. Alhamdulillah, shukrillah, subhanallah. And I'm saying, that's a dandelion. That's not a flower. Maybe in Dar Islam you call it a flower, but we call it a dandelion here. Okay. But we kept on looking at this. But I found over the next few days that I spent with him, that is what he did. That was his inside. Every time we went anywhere, we went to Golders Green. Do you know Golders Green? It has a large, different population. And we went into this shop, and they thought, oh my goodness, don't ask what they thought, okay? But that is exactly what he did. So here, this is something that comes up. Do you use those words? وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ تَضَرُّعًا وَخِيفًا. And then he says, وَدُونَ الْجَهْرِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ بِالْغُدُوِّ وَالْآصَالِ. Now that, it's amazing. And then use that inside feeling in the morning, which is ghudu, and asal is plural. It's shades of the evening. There is only one morning prayer, Fajr. Zohar, Asr, Maghrib and Isha are shades of evening. It's so beautifully put. So he's saying, even in your salah, while you're praying, think of him inside you. Not Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this is not salah. Okay? Just think of him. Okay? And then he says, وَلَا تَقُمْ مِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ. And you'll see continuously what comes here. Do not be those who are heedless. Now if you look at this surah, let me just go on to the last one and then I'll talk about it. So just keep ghafla in mind, which is heedlessness. Now he says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ. Those who are with their Rabb, لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. They're not arrogant. عَنْ إِبَادَتِهِ. They're not arrogant in themselves or whenever they submit to him. وَيُسَبِّحُونَهُ. And they declare his perfection. وَلَهُ يَسْجُدُونَ. And they continually do sajda. This is a mustahab sajda. You can bow your head if you want, but it's a mustahab sajda. Now, two things you will find in this surah. There are two problems. For those who reject divine guidance, there's only two reasons why we reject divine guidance. One is ghafla, and one is takabbur, which is heedlessness and pride. Okay? So heedlessness comes out of two things. I'll go to heedlessness first. Heedlessness, what takes me away, social media, binging on television programs, and that's okay sometimes, okay? But if it takes you away from remembering him, there's a bit of a problem, right? The 5G network, so you're always checking your phone. That's heedlessness. It's taking you away from something. Kibr is self-image. I worry about what, in Gujarati they say, what manasoke say. What people will say. If I dress like this, if I dress like that, if I do this, if I do that. So these are the two things that you'll see in this surah come again and again, and that destroy the human being's ability to follow divine guidance. Are you good? Okay. So now, one of the most amazing surahs of the Quran. All of them are amazing. But let's go to Ankabut, which is surah number 29. Would you like to go there, please? Now, the moment you think of Surah Al Ankabut, you first think that when you say anything, you're tested. You know, even in life, if somebody tells you, I love you, it's not enough. That's why the Prophet said, live with them, travel with them, or work with them, and you'll find out what they're like. So all these people, and sorry to break illusions for the younger ones, who buy you chocolates and roses on Valentine's Day, that's quite cool. And the cards. But to prove it, it takes a lot. Love is something that has to be proven. So here the mission statement is, I believe. And he's not going to, he says, I put you through things to find out whether you really believe or not. Just so you know you believe or you don't. He knows. But so first thing is a mission statement. Second thing about Surah Al Ankabut is that this justifies why the Prophet did hijrah to Medina. Because if you want to know a surah that tells you or why he did hijrah, why would he move from his home place Makkah to a place like Yathrib, or it became Madinatul Munawwara? Why would you move? Why would you and I even move anywhere? It's quite hard. So that's one thing, it justifies what you did. The third thing this surah does, it shows you the fragility of the human being. We are so fragile. You and me don't even know whether we're going to walk down the stairs. We really don't know what's going to happen to us. Everything we own, we don't know whether it's going to stay with us on. Our ecosystem, our outside world, it's really fragile. COVID taught us that. This tiny thing that you and I couldn't see made us stay at home, wear masks, keep away from each other. Even family couldn't come and visit. Tiny little thing. Yet it changed everything. That's how fragile we are. Okay? So the moment you think of Surah Al Ankabut, yes, you will think of the spider, you will think of its web, you will think of fragility, we'll come to it in a minute, but you'll think why they did hijrah. And third thing, every single statement you make, whether it is to a human being, but more so to Allah, will be tested. It will be tested. I will be with you life and death. Mom, you know, Mom, I'll never leave you at all. Mom falls sick. All right, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. Oh God, why isn't she getting better? You may not tell her, but you're telling yourself. Now it's getting a bit difficult, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you get what I'm trying to say. So the first thing we're going to look at is the first few ayat. Okay, so let's look at Ankabut. I'm just going to turn my page to it. Oh, by the way, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, if you recite Ankabut and Rum, Ankabut and Rum, recite means 5 things. Ikra means 5 things. Read, internalize. Come on, you got to teach me. No? Understand, apply, and teach. You got it? Read, internalize, understand, apply, and teach. If you did for Ankabut and Rum, you are definitely Ahlul Jannah. And he says, Wala aqulu inshallah. I don't even say inshallah. So it's not rocket science to learn it. You know, when we have the children's classes at 4 o'clock, when we finish Ankabut, you have the little ones telling you, halfway to Jannah, can we do the other half? And they are so confident they will get to Jannah. So we should be the same thing. Can you imagine going into your grave and they say, what did you do? I did Ankabut and Rum on Laylatul Qadr. Don't touch me. I'm Ahlul Jannah. That is the confidence a human being should have. Are you good? Don't smile at me. Okay, cool. I'm glad you got it. Right, let's start. Alif Lam Mim. Ahasiban nas. Do human beings think? Okay. Ayyutraku. Taraka, they will be left, that we will leave them alone. And yakulu amanna, when they say we believe. Believe means to trust. I trust you. I trust you, God. I know everything you say is right. Wahum la yuftanun, and we will not test them. Fitna is called test, not Gujarati or Urdu, Arabic. Fitna is when you purify gold. The only way to purify gold is to burn off the impurities. It'll be tough. The testing will be tough. Fitna is a test. There's another test in the Quran, which is ibtila or bala. Bala is to get at you so much till you're worn down. You say, okay, khalas, I don't want to know anymore. Right? I've had it done. That's bala. And then you have ahzab, which is purification. But here he says, you will be tested. So if you and I are tested, it's what life does. That's what he does, to find out whether you believe or not. Did you give up on me or not? Okay. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ بِهِمْ. So if you think you're the only ones that were tested, he's saying, we tested those before you as well. That is why read the Quran and you'll find out, مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, those before you. فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ. So Allah knows, in other words, you know yourself, who sadaka, who is telling the truth, وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ, and who is lying. Very many times, and this is something that goes on and on. People say, well, this happened to me because I did something wrong. What did I do wrong that this should happen to me? Why do bad things happen to good people? You just have to look at what we do. We look at the lives of the prophets and the life of the Aimma. Did Sayyida Zainab do anything wrong? Did Imam Hussein do anything wrong? Did Ali Asghar do anything wrong? Did Ali Akbar do anything wrong? That's all you got to look at. He didn't. They didn't. So why were they tested so much? He gives the most difficult of tests to the best of his people. You don't give an A-level exam to a nursery school child. You just don't. That's human beings. So can you imagine him? So the more worthy you are, the more the test. So don't let anybody tell you that that's not working. Okay. In fact, you should worry if there's no test. If life's all hunky-dory, you should think, oh my goodness, where did it go? All right. Now this ayah is for today. In other words, today's world from from October 2023 to now, this is the ayah that answers it. Do those who do evil, and yasbikuna, do they think they will get away with it? Sabaka is to run away. Like if you were being followed and you got away, you said, Sabaka, I got away. And he's saying, do they think and yasbikuna? Do you think they've got away? Sa'a ma yahkumun. It is evil that if they think they have got away. If you and I thought we got away with that little bit of gossip we did, or that little thing we did that was wrong, it's being watched. So sort it out now. So when people say, well, what's happening in the world, isn't God watching? But He gave you and me free will. And this is for me to know. I'm never going to get away with anything. In outside language, they call it karma. It's exactly the same thing. You won't get away with it. So best to analyze ourselves before Ramadan and sort it out and say, I'm sorry. Hard, but easier. Okay. Man kana yarju liqa Allah. Alika is such a beautiful word. It's like one of the most beautiful words of the Quran. If you hope, when you say to meet Allah, basically, you say, Ya ayatuha nafsul mutma'inna irji ila rabbiki radiyatam mardiya. This is Surah Al Fajr, right at the end, the last 4 ayat. This is where it comes in. If you want that sort of thing, that you have divinity, there's divinity in you. You just have to bring it out. فَإِنَّ عَجْلَ اللَّهُ لَعَاتٍ. He says it'll definitely come. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Hopefully one day we'll do Asma al-Husna. So you've got Sami and Alim. If you feel you're not heard, if you feel you want Him to hear you with your du'as, always Sami al-Alim or Sami al-Basir. Please, okay? All right. Waman jahada, if you strive, if you try hard, it's very difficult, but you're trying hard. فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ لِنَفْسِهِ. You're only doing it for yourself. However, li nafsihi has 2 parts to it. When you and I do something, it could be absolutely anything in the world. We either do it for the dunya or we do it for the akhirah. Dunya or the akhirah. So it is up to us to know the intention. It's entirely up to every human being. Why am I doing this thing? Am I doing it to show people? Am I doing it for something? And it's okay to do it for the dunya. If I'm doing something for the dunya in the sense I'm cooking, cleaning, whatever, that's fine. But I could just change the niyyah and say, I'm cooking for the akhirah, in which case I don't expect anything from anyone. I'm expecting it from Him. There are ulama or scholars that never did anything for the dunya. So even if they ate, their niyyah was, I'm eating to get strength so I may serve humanity. So it's how I think, it's my mindset, it's how I change it. So he says, whatever you do, it's li nafsihi, and it's up to you whether you're thinking of dunya or akhirah. Inna Allaha la ghaniyun anil alamin. Allah does not need anything. You're not, when you're doing, say, I'm doing it for Allah, you're not. You're doing it for yourself. 90% of the time we say, well, wallah ma takaruchu. Are you serious? It doesn't need you. You need it. Okay, so that's basically what he's saying here, right? وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and those who believe. We've done this before a lot of times, but here it's a different twist to it. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and they do good deeds. By the way, you have a sticker with tests and striving, and you can put them there. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَنُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ. We will cover up all their sayyat, all their bad deeds. وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَحْسَنَ الَّذِي كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, and we will reward them for the best they did. Now this is talking about Makkah. I'm going to come back to the ayat that I've done before because I need to talk about it. But the Makkans, there was no prayer, there was no fasting. This all came in Medina. So in Makkah, there were no rules like that. No prayers, no fasting, no hijab, no beard, there was nothing really. So here, what is the good deeds they did? And it's a thought process. Because here they're told, if you believe and you do, their good deeds was basically just listening and sticking to the Prophet. Being able to believe in the Prophet. That was their good deeds. Now let me go back a little bit before I go to number 8. So when he said that he would test you, when were these ayat revealed? Now what the Makkans did, I'm going to go through a little bit of history so you understand this a bit. So the first thing they did was, when the Prophet introduced Islam, they said, that's a crazy man. What's wrong with him? He's going totally against tradition, against our traditions. So for a little while, they left him alone. Then when people started taking notice of him and they started believing in him, they thought, oh my God, but they thought that the only people who were following him were not the rich, were not the educated. These were people who thought with their hearts. So these were the lower class as such. So they said, this will be a phase. Then they saw the youth going towards the Prophet, and they said, oh my goodness, now this is getting to be a bit of a problem. And the leaders started noticing, and they said, we can't have this. So what they did was they started negotiating with him. Surah Al Kafirun. They said, we will do a bit of your religion, we will take a bit of yours, and we'll take a bit of ours. He said, sorry, lakum dinukum waliya din, no compromise. So now they thought, oh my goodness, we got to do something. So their media machine came into practice, and they started slandering him. They called him a magician. They called him somebody who was a poet. They called him all sort of different names, soothsayer, because they didn't want the men, women, and the children following him. When they saw that wasn't working, and they saw that the people who even believed kept quiet, they thought, now is our chance to do some physical violence. And you can see it in the world today, right? And this is where, for Bilal, for example, they put a boulder on him. You know that? Bilal was put on the hot sand and a boulder, and all he said was, Ahadun, Ahad. Then there was Khabab ibn Arat. Khabab ibn Arat, in fact, some Mufassirin say that these ayat, or the first few ayat, were revealed because of him. They took him to a blacksmith, and they put the iron rods on his back. His skin peeled off, and he came to the Prophet and he said, I believe. Is this what happens when you believe? And these ayat were revealed. And the other person that these ayat are for the family of Yasir and Sumayya. You know, they had Ammar Yasir, and Yasir and Sumayya were killed. She's the first woman Shahida that was killed. So this historical bit, and now you know why the hijrah was so important. So the first thing they did was this physical violence towards the Muslims, and people could hear the screams of the people, of those who were tortured. Are you good with that section? Now we go to the next section. That talks about parents, 29:8. Now here, I need to go into history so you understand it a bit, and I've written it down. So Sa'ad ibn Waqqas was a young boy. Sa'ad lived with his mother, single mom, really loved him to bits. And Sa'ad, when he heard the Prophet, that was it. He was convinced. His mom used psychological torture, because his mom said, and moms do this a lot, by the way, she said, if you don't change back to the religion of our forefathers, I'm not going to eat. She went on a starvation diet. And she said, Sa'ad, do you want to see your mother die? Sa'ad, is that what you want? You want to see Mama die, don't you? And Sa'ad didn't know what was going on. And this ayah was revealed. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا. And we have, it is, when they say وَوَصَّيْنَا, it's like wasiya, we will enjoin. It is wajib on human beings for their parents to be good to their parents. And I talked about this a little while ago when we did the ayah. وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ. However, if they strive, لِتُشْرِكَ بِهِ, they strive to the fact that you should associate somebody with me, with Allah, مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ إِلْمٍ, because they don't know any better. فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا, do not follow them. إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ, because you have to return to Allah. فَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ, and He will tell you what you did. But that doesn't mean you're going to be rude to her. You're going to be as nice as possible. You will try to explain to her in the best possible way. I won't tell you what happened to Sa'ad ibn Waqqas. You will find out for yourself, but hopefully that will give you a chance to look into it. But basically, he was able to talk to his mama. And any moms out here, I was going to use an example, but not today, maybe some other time, a little later, because I can see the mama sitting here and she'll get pretty mad at me. So we can do that. I'll just use one for Ramadan. because she's not here, and I've asked her beforehand before I could use it. So we have 4 o'clock classes at Ramadan, as you know. You can all come, by the way. So we had this child, one Ramadan, a few years ago, and she came back from school. She was barely 5. I've talked about her before. And she just collapsed, literally collapsed. So the teachers called me because they were scared of giving her water. I'm not very scared. So I gave her some water, and I sat her up. And she said, now I'm going to go to Jahannam. That's it. I didn't want that water. You've taken me to Jahannam, all the rest of it. I said, you're not going to go to Jahannam. Even if you were baligh, I'd have done the same thing. You're not no, but don't tell my mama. I said, I have to tell your mama. So when mama came and I said I gave her water, oh my goodness. She said, how dare you do that? How dare you do that to my daughter? Now my daughter will have to fast for 3 months in a row, blah, 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 all the rest of it. Where did this come from? What sort of religion do you and I follow? There's something wrong with us. If this is the religion we follow, then I'm sorry, but something is definitely wrong, okay? So you can see the comparisons here. And that's why Ankabut in Ramadan, by the way. It's one of the reasons. Okay. We'll move on. 29:12. Okay. So now, what 2 pressures were there? There was psychological torture, and the other one was physical torture. Now you have peer pressure. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Those who cover up the truth. Let's see what they did. لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They tell those who believe, اتَّبِعُوا سَبِيلَنَا. Sabilana is different pathways. Follow our ways. وَلْنَحْمِلْ خَطَايَاكُمْ. And if you think that you're going to get into trouble, don't worry, we'll take your sins away from you. Whatever you think you're worried about, we will take it all away. وَمَا هُمْ بِحَامِلِينَ مِنْ خَطَايَاهُمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِنَّهُمْ لَكَاذِبُونَ. They will never carry anybody else's loads. They're liars. So basically what they did was there was this peer pressure. Come, whatever you did, come party with us, come drink with us, come do whatever you want with us. And don't worry, we will bear the sins. If you say that there's some sort of sin process, we will bear it. We will bear any problems that you have. We will be accountable for it. And he's saying, they're lying. Nobody's going to bear anybody else's sins. So this was now social pressure. They were told, if you do not do what we do, then you know what? Natbar. And he chucked out of Stanmore. Okay? You get. Oh, you're smiling. Okay, right. And he says, look what's going to happen to them. That's why you've got a sticker of a person with a boulder on his back. Okay. وَلَيَحْمِلُنَّ أَثْقَالَهُمْ وَأَثْقَالًا مَعَ أَثْقَالِهِمْ. Not only will they carry their own burdens, but Allah will increase their burden, the weight on their backs. Not with this other person's sins, but because of what they said. وَلَيُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَمَّا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. And on the day of Qiyamah, we will ask them for what they lied about. Very often, and this is a practical problem we have, say you're sitting on the table with a family and you start talking about somebody. And your child has learnt in madrasa that this is ghiba. So your child, and because we teach them not to talk back at their parents, and we tell them, just get off the table and go away and let mom come and ask you why you've left your food and gone away in a private place, and then say, I cannot sit there because you're talking about someone. Mom will say, it's okay. We're just talking. That's not talking. When I grew up, and if we ever dared to say anything, my grandmother will say, can you change all the water here? Because that water has got the vibes of ghiba in it. So all the water would go to the plants, and I would say, but the plants will die. She said, don't be cheeky. But she would change the water if you so much as mentioned someone. Okay, so this is something that, it's a practical thing that happens in our lives all the time. But if you and I say, well, this is just talking, and don't worry, your teacher at madrasa is just saying what she's reading in the book. No, she's not. She's telling you exactly what's in the Qur'an. Okay, right, 41. Favorite ayah. I love this ayah. Now, in between now and 41, what I've done is you will find historical examples of Nuh, Ibrahim, and you will find those. Lut, Ishaq, Yaqub, Shu'aib, and Ad, Thamud, and Musa, and I've colored them in yellow. So if you want to have a look at my Quran, you can have a look later. And it's just so I remember those prophets, right? So you can have a look at them. But let's look at ayah 40. 41, because that's basically what this surah is about. Mathalul ladina, the example, and this is the start of parables in the Quran. It's a lot of parables. Starts here in Ankabut. So he says, Mathalul ladina, the example of those, ittakhadhu min dunillah, who take besides Allah awliya. Awliya is somebody you're inclined towards. And I talked about this before. I'll give you an example. If I put in a room a plant, and I close the door, and there's a window, you will find that the plant will incline towards the window. That is why you say, Aliyun waliyullah. Imam Ali is inclined towards divinity. So it's a simple methodology of what you incline towards. So he says, if you are inclined towards anything other than Allah, then kamathalil ankabut. It's like you are a spider. What does a spider do? Ittakhadhat baytan. His whole security is around his house, his web. Now the web that the spider builds is quite amazing, because if you read about it, the tensile strength of each of those strands is really strong. It's more than steel. Yet, وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْأَنْكَبُوتِ. The most fragile of things is the house of the Ankabut. However, in an earthquake, you will find webs. In a storm, you will find webs. They're that strong. However, brush it aside and it's gone. So he's saying, think about it. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Do you know how frail it is? What does a spider do? In this web, he catches innocent insects. I was going to say people. Innocent insects, and he eats them up. And he thinks, this is where I get my food from, this is where I get everything off. But you and I just brush it aside and it goes away. And that's exactly what it's about. I'm going to give you an example so you don't forget. I had a neighbor. And my neighbor was an old lady who collected, she didn't have any children, so she collected lots of trinkets from whatever country she visited. My children were very young, and she would sit near the window, and she would like us to visit. So when we went to visit, before we went, I would tell them, don't go near her things. You know how you say her shelf is all little trinkets, and you don't go near them. And they would sit there and think, have you ever tried to say no to a child? And they just look at that longingly and think, when can I touch that thing? And you say, no, that's not going to be there. So she wouldn't, no, that's whatever. She got very ill. Her husband died. She got very ill. She was taken to a respite home. She died. One day, I heard all this noise, and I was looking outside my house, and there was a skip. And that whole shelf, they tipped out into the skip because they were emptying the house. And she had looked after each little piece. Most of her day was spent cleaning those bits. And that's exactly what this is talking about. If you and I will focus on things, or what we acquire, then we are inclined just like the spider. Okay, just remember my neighbor. And remember her in your du'as. She was phenomenal. Okay, 45. I love this as well. Utlu ma uhiya ilayka min al-kitab. Utlu tilawa. You know what tilawa is, right? To recite. Recite. Tilawa means to follow. Recite, follow, understand, all the rest of it. So recite. Uhiya, wahi, what was revealed to you from the book. Wa aqimis salah. It didn't say pray salah. It says establish salah. Iqama actually means to make a building stand. That's why when you stand, you say, Bihawlillahi wa quwwatihi aqumu wa aqud. It's something that makes it stand. It's where, and a building will only stand if the foundation is strong. So he's saying, establish salah. Now, what does salah do? And you hear this in majalis all the time. Inna salah tanha anil fahshai wal munkar. Salah will, in essence, keep you away from shamelessness, which is fahsha. Munkar is all sorts of evil. وَلَذِكْرُ akbar. And to remember him is greater. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَصْنَعُونَ. And he's using a building word again. Sana'a is to manufacture. Allah knows what you manufacture. So basically he's saying, and I will verse this differently. I try to write it down a bit difficultly. If my salah does not keep me away from shamelessness, if my salah does not keep me away from all kinds of evil, then there is a problem in the architectural structure of my building. I need to modify it. Now I'm a Koji, very proud to be one, I say all the time. However, I learned to pray salah without understanding it. So if somebody asks me, what are you saying? I tell the children this all the time, I'll repeat it again. I tell the children, say you had a really good friend, not a Muslim, came home and you said, azan, salah time, I'm going to pray. And she says, oh my goodness, you're so religious. And I say, I pray on time. So they say, can I watch you? I say, yeah, sure. Come sit near me. And I'm going, whatever I'm doing, up, down, finish. What did you say? Don't know. I really don't know. I'm talking to my God, but I don't know what I said. So in Ramadan, if you don't learn anything, at least learn what you're saying in Salah. If we don't learn anything, at least learn the surah that we're going to recite, which are going to take us to Jannah. And that's basically what this is trying to say. We've got to understand. Otherwise, if it does not keep me away from anything wrong, then definitely there's a problem in the construction, and I got to change it. It's questionable. The building is very questionable. And if it was being inspected, oh my goodness, we'd have serious problems. It would fall down. Okay? All right. 50. Ayah number 50. Okay, you've got a... Now, ayah number 50 says, وَقَالُوا, they say, لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةً مِّن رَبِّي. Why is there not something magical coming down from the skies? Some signs from the skies. Kul innamal ayatu indallah. Signs are all from Allah. Innama ana nadhirun mubin. I only say what I'm told, and I'm warning you about things that will, if they go wrong, I'll tell you what to do. Now this is the sign, he says. So what's wrong with you? Awalam yakfihim anna anzalna alaykal kitab. Isn't it enough for you that you have the book with you? So when they ask for a sign, Allah's reply is, isn't this book enough for you? Why aren't you looking at this book? Yutla alayhim. It was recited upon you. Inna fi dhalika la rahmatan wa dhikra liqawmin yu'minun. And this book provides two things. Loving mercy is guidance as such. And dhikra, it's a powerful reminder. If your Qur'an is not annotated, if your Qur'an is not something you're going through, then time to do it in the month of Ramadan. You cannot have a pristine Qur'an. You just cannot. If you came to my kitchen, then the children have bought all these cookery books. Have you got them? Kabane, the last one they bought me was from Nadia. Is someone called Nadia? Some person there, yeah. And then because I like Wagamama, they got me the Wagamama book. Okay? But the only one that has got flour and oil and is used is the one that belonged to my mama, and it had recipes for mambris in it. Or recipes of rotli in it, or whatever, right? But you can tell which book is well used. You can come to my kitchen, and if you had a look at them, you will know which one is used and which one has not even been opened because it's so pristine. Mama, because you like Wagamama, we gave you Wagamama. Thank you very much, but I'm not going to use it. So that sort of thing. So in the same way, your Qur'an must be one that is so well used, it looks like it's been thumbed through, right? Are you good? Okay. Next one, 56. I like this one. So you have a picture of an earth. Ya ibadi alladhina amanu. Oh, my servant. Servant's such a beautiful word. I look after you. You submitted to me. I'm your Lord. I look after everything you do. I'm your Rabb. Inna ardiya wasiya. My world is so big. I mean, what's wrong with you when you say, oh, I can't do it because I'm too busy, I'm too this, I'm too... He says the world inside you and outside you is so big. It's wasi, it's vast. You can't say that. For iyaya fa'budun, all I'm asking you to do is submit to me. That's all I'm asking you to do. And you don't make excuses because my world is amazing, my earth is vast, that's all. Go wherever you need to, just submit to me. Take your time. Don't say you don't have time. Anybody who says they don't have time is lying. What did you do the whole night? Slept. Evening, Netflix. I don't know. I'm just giving an example, okay? It's me. I'm not talking about you. Okay. So you've got a sticker of the world. And then obviously you know this one, kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut. But I'm going to put another spin to this, okay? Dha'ika does not mean every nafs will taste death. It says every nafs is already tasting death. Kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut. Every breath I take is the last breath died. Every breath I take. My toddlerhood died, my teenagehood died, my middle age died. I'm getting old. They call me a senior now. I'm 66. I actually get a pension now. Oh, it's really good. Okay. I get to chill. I get the children saying, my grandson says, Nani, you're 66. My goodness, Nani, you're ancient. I am. Okay. But all that died. All that died. And kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut. We are tasting death. Thumma ilayna turja'un. Let me give you another thing to think about, which I was listening to today. When an animal dies, it's worth a lot. Skin, meat, yes? What happens when a human being dies? Value? Zero. If you want to even harvest their organs, you got to keep them alive. Tanaffus, yes? You got to make them breathe artificially. But the moment that person dies, you can't even harvest their organs. Their value is zero. An animal is worth more than you and me. I was reading somewhere that a blue tuna fish was sold for $3.1 million. Right? Dead tuna fish. And at the same time, in Singapore, a billionaire's son who was 41 died. That dead fish, $3.1 million. That billionaire's son, zero. So, kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut. Before I get to the zero, I got to do something valuable. That's what this is trying to say. So, ma ilayna turjan. What am I going to go and tell him? What have I done? Right? Okay. Next one, 2965. Still got a little bit of time. I love this. You've got a ship there, haven't you? فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. So when they ride in the ships, and this is sailing ships and airships as well, دَعَوْا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And remember, when people traveled at that time, even today, we either travel for holiday, which is because we are spending what we have earned, or most people who are frequent flyers travel because of business. Holiday people are not frequent flyers. Frequent flyers, unless they're old like me, okay? But frequent flyers are normally people who are business people. So it says, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ. When they're frequent flyers and they're traveling, they pray, even if they don't believe. They say, whoever you are, even if you're nature, مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ. If you bring me safely on land, إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. I will do anything. But the moment they get on land, khalas, they forget. They go back to ushriku. They go back to doing shirk. And he says, لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُمْ. And they cover up the truth about him. وَلِيَتَمَتَّوْا. He says, enjoy that little bit of time. فَسَوْفَ يَعْلَمُونَ. You will soon find out. Just imagine for a minute, and I talked about it one time before, that you're stuck on Warren Lane here. Is it Warren Lane? What's it called? It's Warren Lane, isn't it? Say you're stuck here, nobody in the mosque, car suddenly stopped, it's pitch black, it's dark. What are you going to do? You come out of the car, you're scared of coming out because you hear all these things from the trees on either side. Oh, it's happened before. Torch doesn't work, light doesn't work, car is stuck there. What you going to do? Please, Ya Allah, just send Sayyid Bhai over, okay? Do something. Phone doesn't work, no signal, Stanway is really bad. So what you going to do? You come out of the car and you hear a noise, you go back in, close the door. Right? This is what you will do. And this is what he's trying to say. Okay, so before that happens, there we go. All right, last one. 69. Okay. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا. Those who strive in our path, and I'll talk about this path in a minute. لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. The moment you say, the path I want to take is the path of divinity, I will show you so many different ways, he says. Do you remember what ayah we did in Surah Al-Fatiha? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Sirat is only one. You know that. There's no plural of sirat. Sirat is wide, Sirat is smooth, Sirat is massive, and it's straight down to up, straight to divinity. When I say down to up, straight to divinity. So he says, the moment you strive on ihdina sirat al-mustaqim or sirat al-mustaqim, lanahdiyannahum subulana. Subulana is a plural of sabil. Sabil is a one way. Subulana is, this is because there's whatever, masaib going on. Oh, finished. Okay. So sabil is one, subul is many. I will show you so many different pathways of doing good. Inna Allaha ma'al muhsinin. Muhsinin, Allah is with those who do ihsan, who do good to others. Now you imagine Sirat al-Mustaqim as the highway, as the motorway. So the M25. To join the M25, there's so many little roads. You know that, don't you? Okay, so just imagine, you've got onto the highway, but he says, I'll show you so many different ways of how to get onto there. The moment you make your intention that I want to go onto the highway that leads to divinity. That's it. Make your intention, and I'll show you so many ways. Sabil is known as a local road. So basically what he's trying to say is that I will open numerous ways or numerous opportunities for you, and I will always be with those who do ihsan. I will end, I've got a couple of minutes. I will end with what ihsan is. And I take this from Shaheed Murtaza Mutahari, and in his book, Falsafatuna, Our Philosophy, he says, he explains ihsan. I'll explain it in my words. This is not what he used, but if you read it, you'll get the gist of it. He says, if I had £1, and I gave 50 pence to my neighbor, that is a responsibility. If I had £1 and I gave it all to my neighbor, that is ihsan. That is what ihsan is. I gave what I needed to somebody else. And that's why he says, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. That is basically what giving is all about. Giving away something that I need myself. Okay. So we've basically come to the end of Surah Al Ankabut. Okay. Next week, inshallah, we will do Surah Al Rum. I have asked Yasmin whether we can do some classes in Ramadan, and she will find out, and we will know whether we can do them on Thursdays. But I've got a minute. You had these last week about the Prophet. There are mnemonics which teach you the prophets in chronological order, right? So look at your bookmark. I'm only going to do the first line. So there's 28 prophets mentioned in the Quran, and today we will do 13. Okay? You don't have to look at it, but you can if you want. Now you close your eyes and imagine. You have to know the two A's, Adam and Idris. You know A, don't you? So Adam and Idris went to the NHS. Can't be that difficult. Adam and Idris went to the NHS. They went to visit Ibrahim. Are you good? Adam, Idris. NHS stands for Nuh, Hud, and Saleh. And they went to visit Ibrahim. Are you good with that? Start again. Adam and Idris went to the NHS to visit who? Ibrahim. So what are those? Adam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Saleh, and Ibrahim. So they went to visit him. At the door, they saw Lut. Oh my goodness. Lut was there, right? So Lut directed them to level II and room YY. Are you good with that? Where did Lut direct them? Level II and room YY. II will start for, who came first? You've got the two down there in your thing. Ismail and Ishaq. YY, you know. First came Yaqub and then came Yusuf. But when they went up there, who else was in the room? Ayub and Shuaib. And the way you remember Ayub and Shuaib at the end is, you know, you write alayhi salam, you write AS. So remember that at the end of the sentence. Okay, now give me the chronological order of the first 13. Adam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Saleh, Ibrahim, Lut. Go on. Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf. And who was there? Ayub and Shuaib alayhi salam. Are you good? So you already know 13 names in chronological order. And we'll do the next 15. Are you good? Good. Can we have a salawat, please? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraja. You should have one of these. If you don't, pick them up from Zara. She creates them. And inshallah, we will do Surah Al-Rum as well. Can we end with the Surah Al-Fatiha? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم.